Margot was a cherished figure in her small suburban neighborhood just outside Chicago. With her silver hair and warm, welcoming smile, she was a beloved presence among her neighbors. By her side was Ranger, a loyal German shepherd with a sleek black coat and piercing, alert eyes. Years earlier, Margot had found Ranger at a local shelter. He'd been a gaunt, trembling figure in the corner of the kennel, and her heart had gone out to him immediately. She adopted him on the spot, and from that moment he became more than a companion. He was her protector, her confidant. "We're quite the team, aren't we, Ranger?" Margot often said, scratching behind his ears. Ranger would meet her gaze with unwavering devotion, his eyes filled with an understanding no words could capture. Mornings with Ranger were a treasured routine. Margot would step out of her cozy, ivy-covered home, and together they'd stroll along the quiet streets. They'd pause at the neighborhood bakery for a loaf of fresh sourdough, exchanging warm greetings with passers-by. Ranger was ever vigilant, his eyes scanning the surroundings as he walked just a step ahead of her. But on one particular morning, Ranger's demeanor shifted. His body tensed, and he stopped frequently, sniffing the air with his ears pinned forward. Every few steps, he'd glance back at Margot, as if urging her to quicken her pace. "Ranger, what's gotten into you today?" Margot asked, her tone light, but with an edge of concern. She gave his neck a reassuring pat, but Ranger remained on high alert, his attention darting to every small sound or movement. As they neared the bakery, Ranger tugged on his leash, clearly eager to head back home. Margot laughed nervously. "All right, boy, let's grab the bread and make it quick." Inside the bakery, the familiar smells of fresh pastries and coffee greeted her. But as Margot waited for her order, her eyes were drawn to two men loitering across the street. They appeared deep in conversation, yet their gaze was fixed on her. Something about their demeanor made Margot's stomach tighten. Logan and Ethan, strangers to her, spoke in hushed tones. "She's alone. Just her and that dog," Logan muttered, his voice low but confident. "Should be easy." Ethan nodded, his eyes lingering on the bakery door. When Margot stepped outside with her loaf of bread, Ranger's tension was palpable. He stood rigid, his eyes locked on the two men, a deep growl vibrating in his chest. Margot frowned, her unease growing. "What is it, Ranger? You're acting like you've seen a ghost," she murmured, quickening her steps. She glanced over her shoulder, but the men were gone, leaving her with the uneasy feeling that she'd just escaped some unseen threat. Back at home, Margot locked the door behind them and exhaled. She tried to shake off the lingering anxiety, but Ranger wouldn't settle. He remained by the door, ears pricked, his gaze fixed on the street outside. "Ranger, you're scaring me," Margot said softly, crouching to meet his gaze. She ran her fingers through his fur, but he didn't flinch. His attention stayed on the door as if he could sense a danger she couldn't see. Meanwhile, across the street, Logan and Ethan lingered in the shadows, their eyes still on Margot's house. "She's just an old woman," Logan said with a smirk. "What's she going to do? That dog's the only problem." Ethan frowned. "That dog doesn't look like it scares easily, but if we take care of him, the rest is a breeze." Logan nodded, his confidence unwavering. "We'll come back tonight, when it's quiet. She won't even know what hit her." As night fell, Margot curled up in her favorite armchair with a book, the soft light from her lamp casting a warm glow around the room. But the unease from earlier wouldn't leave her. Ranger was pacing by the door, his growls low and steady whenever a noise broke the silence. "Ranger, you've been on edge all day," she said, setting her book aside. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against it, to listen. The only sounds were the rustle of leaves and the occasional creak of a branch in the wind. Still, Ranger's instincts couldn't be ignored, and Margot found herself glancing at the locks on her door, wondering what her faithful companion sensed that she couldn't. "There's nothing out there, my friend," Margot murmured softly, her words meant to calm herself as much as Ranger. Still, unease clung to her like a shadow. Ranger stood rigid by the door, his alert eyes scanning for any sign of movement, as if he could sense an unseen threat. As Margot prepared for bed, she moved through the house with a growing sense of dread. She double-checked the locks on the doors and windows, her fingers trembling. Outside, beneath the cover of darkness, Logan and Ethan watched silently. One by one, the lights inside flickered out until the house was bathed in black. Ethan's lips curled into a grim smile. "There it is, Logan," he muttered. "All we have to do is wait." Logan's face was hardened with resolve. His voice was low and cold. "Tonight's the night. They won't know what hit them." Inside, Ranger stayed rooted to his spot by the door. His posture was unyielding, every muscle in his body taut with instinctual readiness. Margot didn't fully understand the foreboding, but deep down she knew this night would be unlike any other. The early hours were eerily quiet. Margot finally settled into bed, exhaustion pressing down on her, but Ranger didn't rest. He stayed in the hallway, his watchful eyes fixed on the front door. His fur bristled, and his ears twitched at the faintest sound. Margot stirred as a low, guttural growl rumbled from him, snapping her from her half-asleep state. "Ranger?" she mumbled groggily. "What is it now?" Before she could rise, a metallic jingle cut through the silence. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of someone tampering with the lock. Margot's heart dropped. Moments later, a loud crash shattered the stillness as the front door burst open. Margot screamed as two masked men stormed into her home. Logan, his face twisted with menace, barked, "Stay quiet, lady. We're not here to hurt you. Just give us anything valuable." Panic surged through her as she stumbled backward. Her mind raced, but her body felt frozen in place. Then Ranger sprang into action. With a ferocious growl, he lunged at Logan, sinking his teeth into the man's arm and dragging him to the floor. "Get this damn dog off me!" Logan howled, thrashing under Ranger's unyielding grip. "Hold on!" Ethan yelled, rushing forward with a knife. But before he could intervene, Ranger turned his fierce attention on him, forcing Ethan to stumble backward in shock. Margot stood paralyzed, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she watched Ranger fight with unwavering courage. His loyalty and ferocity lit a fire in her. When Logan managed to push himself up and lunge toward her, she grabbed a heavy lamp from the side table and swung it with all her might. The impact sent him reeling, his curses filling the air. "Ethan!" Logan snarled, clutching his side. "Do something!" But Ethan's confidence had vanished. Blood dripped from his arm where Ranger had bitten him, and his eyes were wide with fear. "This dog's gonna kill us!" he yelled. "We need to get out of here!" The men exchanged a frantic look. Now Logan, humiliated and seething with rage, pointed a shaking finger at Margot. "This isn't over, old lady. We'll be back." With that, he and Ethan bolted into the night, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as they'd come. The house fell silent once more, except for Margot's labored breathing and Ranger's heavy panting. She dropped to her knees beside her loyal dog, wrapping her arms around him as tears streamed down her face. "Oh, Ranger," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved me. I don't know what I would have done without you." Ranger sank to the floor beside her, his body still tense, his eyes still locked on the door. Though exhaustion tugged at him, his vigilance didn't waver. As dawn broke the next morning, the house was quiet again. but Margot's heart remained heavy with the memory of the night. She looked at the splintered doorframe and the bruises on her hands, visible reminders of how real it had been. Ranger lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. He wasn't just a companion, she realized. He was her protector, her guardian, her hero. Ranger rested in the kitchen, his body still and seemingly at ease, but his ears remained alert, his sharp eyes scanning the room, ready to respond to any hint of danger. Nearby, Margot steadied her trembling hands with a sip of coffee, her nerves frayed, but her resolve unbroken. Gripping the phone tightly, she dialed the police and, through a shaky voice, recounted the terrifying events. The two men, the attack, and Ranger's incredible bravery in fending them off. It wasn't long before two officers arrived to take her statement. Ranger stayed close, his gaze fixed on the strangers with a mixture of caution and defiance. Officer Carter, a warm-faced man with a kind demeanor, listened attentively before turning his focus to Ranger. In kneeling down, he gave the dog a gentle pat and said, "This dog is a real hero. Not many would stand their ground like that." Margot's hand rested on Ranger's fur, her pride evident in the way her fingers lingered on his coat. "He's not just a hero," she said with quiet conviction, her voice soft but unyielding. "He's family." The second officer, his tone more pragmatic, broke the moment. "Ma'am, your dog's courage is remarkable, but those men know you're alone here. They might come back. We strongly recommend reinforcing your locks and installing a security system." Margot nodded, her expression a blend of determination and unease. "I'll do whatever I need to. I just want to feel safe again." In the days that followed, Margot acted quickly. A locksmith replaced her old locks with stronger ones, and a technician installed a state-of-the-art alarm system. Yet, the sense of security she sought still felt out of reach. Every knock at the door sent her pulse racing, and every shadow outside her window made her stomach twist. Ranger, too, seemed to share her vigilance. He patrolled the house tirelessly, moving from room to room, pausing at the slightest sound to emit a low, protective growl. Margot watched him with a mix of gratitude and sorrow, knowing that both of them understood the threat hadn't truly passed. Miles away, in a dimly lit alley, Logan and Ethan sat nursing their wounds. Logan's arm was bandaged, his face twisted with fury. "That dog!" he hissed, his teeth clenched. "It ruined everything. Who knew it'd fight like that?" Ethan, rubbing his sore shoulder, responded bitterly, "It's just a dog. Next time we'll be ready. He won't stop us again." Logan's eyes darkened, his voice cold and sharp. "You're right. This time we take care of him first. Then the old lady won't stand a chance." That evening, as Margot cleaned the kitchen, an unsettled feeling clung to her. Ranger stayed close, his posture tense, his gaze locked on the front door. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Kneeling beside him, Margot ran her fingers through his fur, her voice soft but determined. "It'll be okay, Ranger. We're ready now. They won't come back." Ranger's dark, unwavering eyes seemed to promise otherwise. If they did return, he'd be there, standing between her and danger, no matter the cost. In that moment, Margot felt a fragile sense of courage anchored solely in her loyal companion. The cold, still hours of early morning wrapped the house in uneasy silence as Margot tried to rest. Ranger, however, remained vigilant, his eyes fixed on the front door, his body coiled with tension. A faint noise broke the stillness, a shuffle outside. His growl deepened, low and menacing. Half awake, Margot murmured, "Ranger, what now?" But before she could rise, A sharp metallic clink, followed by the crash of splintering wood, jolted her fully awake. The front door slammed open, and her scream pierced the night. Logan and Ethan stood in the doorway, their faces set with icy determination. Logan stepped forward, gripping a metal rod. "Playtime's over, lady," he sneered. "Did you really think we'd just walk away?" Margot backed up, her heart racing, her voice trembling but resolute. "Leave. I called the police last time. You'll regret this." Ethan chuckled darkly, pulling a knife from his jacket as he moved closer, his steps deliberate and threatening. "Oh, we'll see about that. Not this time. We're not leaving without what we came for." Without hesitation, Ranger hurled himself at Logan, a fierce growl erupting from deep within him as he tackled the man to the floor. His jaws clamped down hard on Logan's arm, forcing him to drop the rod he had been wielding. Across the room, Margot stood paralyzed, her breath hitching in her throat. Fear for Ranger coursed through her, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the chaos unfolding in front of her. "That damn dog!" Logan bellowed, writhing in pain as he fought to free himself from Ranger's relentless grip. "Ethan, do something!" Ethan, gripping a knife tightly, lunged toward Ranger, but the dog moved with incredible speed, dodging the blade and leaping at Ethan, slamming him back against the wall. Ranger was unwavering, his sole purpose to protect Margot, no matter the cost. Seizing her chance, Margot grabbed her phone with trembling hands. Dialing 911, she sobbed into the receiver. "Please, send help. They're in my house, they're trying to hurt me." Her voice cracked with desperation as she glanced back at Ranger, who fought with every ounce of his strength. Ethan, now bleeding and panicked, shouted, "Logan! We need to get out of here! That dog's going to kill us!" But Logan, enraged and unwilling to back down, lunged at Ranger with a metal rod. Before he could swing, Ranger launched himself once more, knocking Logan to the ground and sending the rod clattering across the room. The sudden flash of red and blue lights outside signaled the arrival of the police. With weapons drawn, officers burst through the door, ordering Logan and Ethan to the ground. The intruders had no choice but to surrender. One of the officers hurried to Margot, who was now kneeling beside Ranger, her tears spilling onto his fur. "It's okay now, Mom," the officer said softly. "Thanks to this dog, we've caught them." Margot, her hands trembling, gently stroked Ranger's head. "You saved me, Ranger," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're my hero." As dawn broke, sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the wreckage left behind. Yet, despite the chaos, Margot felt a profound sense of safety and peace she hadn't known in years. Logan and Ethan were now in custody, and Ranger, though scratched and tired, remained by her side, his protective gaze never wavering. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him, realizing no words could ever fully capture her gratitude. Later that morning, 2 officers returned to take her full statement. Officer Carter, who had been tracking the case, knelt to greet Ranger with a look of admiration. "Ms. Margot," he said with a smile, "we'd like to honor Ranger. Our chief wants to recognize his bravery. He deserves a medal." Margot's eyes welled with tears as she gently touched Ranger's head. "A medal," she murmured. "You deserve so much more, my friend." That afternoon, Margot brought Ranger to the station, where the officers had organized a small ceremony in his honor. Neighbors who had heard about the incident gathered to celebrate the dog who had protected his owner so courageously. The police chief himself placed a gleaming medal around Ranger's neck. "This dog," the chief began, addressing the crowd, "is not just a hero to Ms. Margot. He is a symbol of courage and loyalty to this entire community. On behalf of all of us, we thank him for his incredible bravery." The room erupted in applause as Margot watched with pride, tears streaming down her face. Ranger, ever composed, sat dutifully by her side, his steadfast nature unshaken. That evening, back at home, Margot prepared a special dinner for Ranger, a hearty feast worthy of a true hero. While he ate, she sat quietly in her armchair, reflecting on everything they had endured together. To her, Ranger was more than just a dog. He was her strength, her guardian, her unwavering support. Neighbors stopped by throughout the evening to offer their comfort and gratitude. Among them was Mrs. Harper, who brought a homemade apple pie and a bottle of wine. "Margot," she said warmly, "Ranger isn't just your hero, he's ours too." Margot smiled, deeply moved, and as she looked at Ranger, she knew she would never take his loyalty or love for granted. Ranger has always been extraordinary. Now, he's not just our guardian, he's our shield. As night cloaked the quiet countryside, Margot and Ranger found their place on the porch, the stars above shimmering like scattered diamonds. Ranger, his neck still adorned with the gleaming Medal of Honor, laid his head gently on her lap, a rare tranquility softening his gaze. Margot's fingers wove through his fur, her heart swelling with gratitude, safety, and love. "My dear Ranger," she murmured, her voice barely above the whisper of the evening breeze, "you're so much more than a hero. You're my family, my truest friend. With you here, I know nothing can ever truly harm us." The world around them fell still, save for the soft rustle of leaves carried by the wind. Together, under the vast expanse of the starry sky, they basked in the calm, a calm they had fought hard to earn, knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, that united, they were invincible. What an incredible story, right? Margot and Ranger's journey isn't just about a dog protecting his owner. It's a testament to the unshakable bond between a human and their loyal companion. It's a tale that reminds us how love, trust, and courage can overcome even the darkest of nights. Ranger wasn't just a pet. He was a hero, a defender, and a beacon of unwavering friendship. In a moment when Margot needed him the most, he didn't hesitate to step up, risking everything to keep her safe. That kind of loyalty and bravery, it's something truly extraordinary, and it's what makes stories like these so powerful. They show us that the connection we share with animals can transcend words. It's built on understanding, devotion, and a mutual promise to always be there for one another. But beyond the action and suspense, this story carries a deeper message: the strength of true companionship. It reminds us that in a world where danger can lurk in the shadows, having someone, or in this case, a brave, steadfast dog, by your side can make all the difference. So, what did this story stir in you? Did it remind you of a time when your pet came through for you? Or maybe it inspired you to cherish the little everyday moments you share with them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, and let's celebrate the incredible ways animals enrich our lives. And hey, if you enjoyed this story as much as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a heartwarming tale. Because sometimes we all need a reminder of what true loyalty looks like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.